Let's work our way through this problem using factoring by grouping. We're going to check for factoring by grouping whenever we have an even amount of terms. Now, it's not always going to work, but it's a simpler method, so it's not bad to check. So you'll see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, so we're going to give it a try. Now, one of the most common issues that students have when factoring by grouping is they do something like this. This negative sign cannot be grouped outside the parenthesis because now we just changed the sign on that 8. So what we're going to want to do when we group is keep that negative sign in and put a little plus sign in between. So just for clarity, I'm going to rewrite this. So this would be 5x cubed minus 4x squared plus negative 10x plus 8. Now, for factoring by grouping to work, we're going to look at each of the terms individually and say, what do those have in common? What do they both have that is the same? Well, they have an x squared, so I'm going to factor out an x squared. Let's keep those colors the same. And what am I left with? That would be 5x minus 4. Now, we could do what I call a 5-second check. If I do 5x times x squared, yes, that does give me 5x cubed. X squared minus 4 is negative 4x squared. That is correct factoring. Now, for factoring by grouping to work, whatever is here must match here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, what do these have in common? And I'm going to notice here that my 5x is positive. So for these things to match, I'm going to want that to be positive as well. So I'm not going to factor out a positive number. I'm going to factor out a negative number. So I notice 2 goes into both of these numbers. So I'm not going to factor out a positive 2. I'm going to factor out a negative 2. Leave me with 5x minus 4. And to do the 5-second check, negative 2 times 5x makes negative 10x. Negative 2 times 4, negative 4 is positive 8. That is correct factoring. So now when we look at these terms, we say, what do the two big terms have in common? Well, they both have 5x minus 4 times 5x minus 4. So that absolutely works. So I can factor that out. So out of both terms, I'm going to factor out a 5x minus 4. What am I left with on the inside? Well, that would be an x squared minus 2. And I'll scoot that in. And we have now factored by grouping. So now we stop and ask ourselves, is there any more grouping? Well, yes, there is. You'll see the factor out here, 5x minus 4, is completely factored. But here I have a x squared minus 2. There are still things I can do with that. Now, you may just say, I want to take each of these factors and set them equal to 0, because I know how to solve that, and that's perfect. If you do, we can get the answer here of being 5x equals 4, so x equals 4/5. And then for the other one, we add our 2, so we're going to give this x squared equals 2. We're going to take the square root of both sides, resulting in plus or minus the square root of 2. And we have 3 answers. So we now have the answers of 4/5, comma, the square root of 2, comma, the negative square root of 2. Those are our 3 answers written as a comma separated list. Now, if you wanted to do this with factoring, this is just a little extension. You'll notice we're going to get the same answer. I'm going to go over here and say 0. Notice I'm literally just copying the same thing down. Nothing new to see here. There we go. Okay, what are we going to do here to factor? Well, again, that stays the same. So now over here, I'm going to say this is something squared, so I need a difference of squares. So how can I rewrite the number 2 so it is something squared? Well, if I rewrite it as the square root of 2 squared, now I have a difference of squares. And that problem has not changed because the square root and the square are inverse operators, so it would result in just the same thing we started with. So now for factoring, when we factor a difference of squares, we know that is x minus the value, make that a bracket, times x plus the value. And now we have completely factored, so I'm going to go to a solve. We're going to solve using the zero product property, set each of them equal to 0. So 5x minus 4 equals 0. X minus the square root of 2 equals 0. And x plus the square root of 2 equals 0. And so finally, this is going to result in, just like we had before, x equals 4/5. I'm going to add this to the other side, giving me x equals square root of 2. And I'm going to subtract this square root of 2 to the other side, resulting in x equals negative square root of 2. So you can see we arrived at the same answers. One just using quadratic solving and one using factoring. I hope this video is helpful.